Hello, everyone. My name is Andreas from Star2 Group, and I want to welcome you to the European AI Talks 2024. Warm welcome to the ones here in Munich in our space, as well as the ones zooming in virtually from all around Europe or around the globe. Yeah, we have a fantastic panel lined up today. I want to give you a quick overview and welcome. Maybe we can start with the slideshow. I forgot I have two roles. I also need to click. Yeah, this event is hosted by Startup Network Europe and Star2 Group, and is powered by the Humane AI Network, Transatlantic AI Exchange, TikTok, Rippling, and we have a fantastic panel for you today. Our moderator is Sabine from Star2 Group. We have Lukowicz, Scientific Director at DFKI and the coordinator of the Humane AI Network. We have Jelena from Hostelworld. We have Christoph from Futurice, Korbinian from OroraTech, and last but not least, I want to invite Rippling, who is here today, to give a short intro to what they are doing before we start with the panel.
Hey everyone, I won't be too long, don't worry. Connor Tobin is my name. I lead the DACH team here in Rippling, and really excited to be here amongst all of you guys today. Look, we at Rippling understand the difficulties of running a startup, you know, managing your HR, managing compliance, all the legal issues that come with it. You know, given that all you guys are managing the cutting edge of technology, I'm sure HR compliance is probably not the most energizing thing for you guys, which is why Rippling are here to help. Rippling, we're all-in-one HR, payroll, and compliance software. And we've partnered with Start2 to support companies similar to yourselves who are going through the growth phase, and they want to basically help with compliance, the compliance element of it, and we can take that off your hands. So look, as I mentioned, we are partnering with Start2, so we do have a couple of different offers on. So I think it's 6 months free usage of Rippling, as well, both from a HR perspective as well as a employee of record perspective. So really looking forward to connecting with everyone today, and yeah, look forward to networking later. So over to the panelists.
Many thanks, Connor. And because of my position here and of the shadow, I missed one panelist. So I want to take this time and say hi to Annegret from Codecentric. And without further ado, let's get over to the panel.
Thank you. So first of all, very warm welcome to everyone here in our audience on site, but also a warm welcome to everyone who's joining us virtually. We have way more people actually joining us virtually than we do have here in the room. And I think even the audience we have here tonight is already quite impressive. So I'm happy to see all of you here tonight. So before we start with the brief introduction from a personal note of all the speakers, I would really be interested to know whom we have here in the audience. So maybe if you could raise your hand if you are a startup. Okay, quite a few. If you are a corporate. Also quite a few. And do we have investors here tonight as well? We do. Startups, watch out. Have you seen the hands raised here? Okay. We have time to network later, so grab them and make sure you see them and talk to them. All right, so starting with the panel here, we have 4 slots, and we will be speaking here in the panel for an hour. And after the panel, we will have the opportunity for you for a Q&A session. Of course, all the speakers will be here afterwards as well. So if you have any personal questions, you can also grab them over a drink and ask your question there. But just so you know, there will be time for questions also after the panel. The panel itself will have 4 blocks. So initially, we talk about the evolution of AI. Where did it all start? Where did it go? What trends do we see? The second part will then focus on the path to innovation, how important it is to bring products to the market? Is pace the more important thing, or do we want to focus on the ethics behind maybe? So we have a lively discussion on that topic. The third block we will talk about is AI regulation and the impact it's going to have on Europe and also on AI innovation. And lastly, we will be talking about enhancing productivity. So the synergies between humans and AI, and also trustworthiness in this said interaction. So before we start, I would like to ask everyone here on the panel in one phrase, if you could just say who you are and what's important to you, and then we will dive right in with the questions. Annegret, or here, Jelena, if we have the mic here.
You were skipped once, so we need to start from you now.
Yeah. If you push the button, yeah. No? Okay, then we will just use this one. And we just do the rounds. I just wanted to make sure we have a woman starting here, of course.
Yeah, it's blinking.
Okay, so just start with who you are.
I think it
yeah,
will take a
Annegret.
while. Now it's on. Yeah, thank you very much for the invite. My name is Annegret. I'm a chief software architect at Codecentric, and Codecentric is a middle-sized IT consulting company. And we do AI in several areas, I can say, in manufacturing, in insurance, so there where you can rate it, but even and things where we think it's due to do, which is in call it green IT, so that we have really IT, which is not only energy consuming things and servers. So I think that we are here on a quite edge level, but based on our customers, we are on the normal enterprise level as you can rate it.
Perfect. Paul?
Yes, I'm Paul Lukowicz. I'm a professor of AI, but I have a background in AI and physics, which is very much drives what I do. So I work at the interface of AI and the real world and also the social world. And I think what I really care about when you use AI, again, coming from physics, everything has an explanation and stuff, is when you talk about AI, you really should understand it's mathematics, and you should not expect wonder, but you should always understand what a technology, what is behind the technology and what it can do. So use it rationally. So my motto is the biggest danger is not AI, but a combination of artificial and natural stupidity.
Okay, Korbinian.
Hi, I'm Corby. I'm a product leader at OroraTech. OroraTech builds software and satellites for wildfire management. And I'm responsible there for what we call the clean data product group. That's basically everything satellites, constellation satellite data. And I'm always super interested in learning like how can new technology like AI best integrated into our product suite.
Hello, I'm Christoph from Futurice. I'm the head of technology and data. And Futurice is a company that cares about connecting silos again and making end-to-end transparency and digital transformation. And my passion and my main task is about like how could data and AI really drive innovation in companies and how they could gain more efficiency, especially at the current market situation. And how do we also improve in the end, the people life. So a lot of healthcare that we're doing, especially diagnostics improvement and educational improvement in the healthcare sector, but also going from construction to energy to automotive, a lot of portfolio and a lot of interesting things where AI plays a huge role and in a lot of different factors, and something are more surprising than others.
Hi, everyone. I am Jelena, and I'm the head of product at Hostelworld, focusing mostly on our consumer side of the product and our mobile apps. Hostelworld helps people book accommodation in hostels, but also meet other travelers while they're on the go. So we've created a social network on top of our core product recently, which is one of my most proud works. And as a product leader, I'm not nerdy enough to understand the depths of AI, but I really care about the application of AI into products and how we can foster stronger product solutions with it.
Perfect, thank you. So myself, I'm Sabine. I'm leading our AI operations and our AI team of Star2 Group here in Europe, meaning we offer programs to startups. So I'm making sure we offer the right content, we have the right connections for you, we work with the right ecosystem partners globally. And also on the other side, we work with corporates. We are consulting them for entrepreneurship and AI adoption. So I'm also involved there. So if you have any questions regarding that, feel free to ask me as well. But as you see, we are quite cozy up here on stage anyway. So we decided I would be your informed moderator today instead of joining the panel myself. So without further ado, we have already said that we would focus initially on the journey of AI, right? So we started with neural networks. It then moved on to Gen AI, which is now the one topic everyone's talking about, specifically LLMs. And so I just want to make sure that here in the panel, we also shed light on all the other trends we see and not only focus on Gen AI and LLMs, but of course, if you feel like you want to know more about that, we're happy to dive into that as well. But for now, Paul, I know we've talked briefly beforehand and you said there's so many other things. So I'm curious to hear what else you see.
So let's see how to back history of AI in 3 minutes, right? So first thing is AI is 3/4 of a century old. Back in 1950s, people came up with the idea. And it was a time where you would use a machine the size of this building to do simple arithmetic calculations. And some people with a vision said, okay, cool, we can do that. Can we build a system that thinks like a human? We can do a few additions. And of course, they knew they can't, but they called the field artificial intelligence anyway, because if you called the field how to do complex things with a computer, it would be much more difficult to get money than for artificial intelligence, right? And then back at the time, actually, they very quickly started promising things like so-called general problem solver, and you had chatbots with ELIZA and neural networks, and they never did anything useful. So for a few decades, AI became just a field for nerds like me. And then back in the 80s, there was this IBM machine that beat Kasparov in chess. And that was the age of so-called expert systems. So we had computers that could store a lot of rules and search them quickly. So we had human-defined rules. We gave them to a computer. The advantage was the computer could search them most quickly than an expert, and you could put a computer everywhere, whereas we had only one expert around. The thing ran into limitations very quickly. There were two limitations. First of all, experts to code the rules are expensive. Second, for many things, expert cannot tell you rules. Tell me the rules, computer rules, to distinguish a cat from a dog. You can't really, to recognize your face. So eventually, there came the age of data, age of even faster computers. So somebody said, hey, cool, I don't code rules. I give the system a few examples, a lot of data, code in a loss function what I wanted to do, and it will extract the rules, right? And then people came up with deep learning, and then came the era of deep learning. So computers could recognize images, could mine data, but it also had limitations. And the limitation there was that you needed to provide the data with labels. You would train it to solve one problem, recognize cats from dogs, but it couldn't recognize birds from mice. And then somebody came with a new idea. They said, you know, we have more data. The entire human knowledge is coded on the internet in texts. Let's just let the system analyze it without any instructions and see what it learns. And they came with the idea, well, you have to tell it something what it has to learn, right? You know, you have texts, take a sentence, scratch a word, let the system guess the word, and train it to always guess the right word. And that's all. And then came Gen AI and ChatGPT. And we're all amazed that that very system led to actually devices that can take you answer to nearly everything, right? And then it combined with images, and it can generate images. But one thing that you have to remember, down at the bottom, what those systems really have as something new is an approximation of common sense, right? It is a thing what computer always missed. They could distinguish cats from dogs, but they didn't understand what a cat or a dog is. They didn't understand the interaction. And now they still don't understand. But by the statistics, they have a good approximation of our human common sense. And now they can interact with you and let you talk like a normal human to them, right? You can show them pictures and they will tell you what is happening in the pictures. You can ask them questions related to real life and they can do something. And that is the real evolution. Systems that can interact with the real world. And as a last sentence, by the way, many of the things that those systems can do are not things that you as a human think as being characteristics of your intelligence. The fact that you can walk around without knocking everything down, what the robots are starting to learn, doesn't make you an intelligent person. Being able to drive without killing yourself and everyone around is not something that makes you very intelligent. But that's the level we brought machines to.
So maybe over to you, Christoph. I think intelligence is also needed on your side. You're working more on the applied side of things. And you have solutions for the production side, other trends that you have told me beforehand that you see. So when we apply it, when we go from what the machine is able to do to then the application in corporations, what do you see is important there, and which trends do you see?
So you can have to imagine that when you are having around a production site, let's say you're building cars, that's super complex, and it has a lot of constraints and problems, and you want to always optimize it. So the whole lean manufacturing is all about optimizing and improving the processes. But now there are the first experiments running, and I cannot say the company names, but car manufacturers really improving with the generative AI approach to, can I per day optimize my production flow differently? The production is like generated. It's failed, horrible, because the reasoning, the constraints were not there. So they're experimenting quite a bit with neurosymbolic AI, trying to figure out, when I know who's sick, who's there, what material comes, what's being asked for, in which countries there, which labor laws are there, and stuff like that, and which break situations are there, I can really optimize my workflow day in, day out, depending on what is needed. Like if there's now blue cars ordered or this type of car ordered. So there's a lot of experimenting going on, and it's a very interesting trend, because it brings out it solves a real problem that these companies have, because it bounds so much capital to do the right things over and over again. And I think it's very interesting to experiment with that, but it's not yet on the, let's say, mass level. And then we're currently trying to investigate with the consortium also of the European Union, how to use these models and how to use manufacturing as a service to actually build networks of production industries that really can work together over long distance, and also logistic and stuff like that. So there's the complexities getting bigger and the models getting better in order to do so, which is super fascinating.
That's something,
Of course.
That's something I forgot to say. That's actually the fascinating thing. We had like the symbolic, the rule-based things. Now we have ChatGPT. And what is really the next big coming thing now, what people are working on, is marrying the two together, right? Because we realize ChatGPT is nice to play around, but it's limited because it's just the stupid statistics. But now you add human knowledge in form of rules and reasoning, and then you get something real powerful. And that is the next big thing that the researchers are working on.
So actually, my follow-up question would have been to you anyway. So which technologies do you see in your work environment that are applied? Like, so we've been talking about Gen AI, ChatGPT, large language models. Is that the main focus you see, let's say, in production or overall in your work experience?
A lot of AI stuff is happening. So for example, in our company, we are roughly 1,000 people in all over Europe. So knowledge, we have in a knowledge work, we have the challenge of who knows what, and where is this person, what does this person know? And we build like a knowledge man system that actually grabs knowledge where it's created, and it's using like machine learning, and it's heuristic to identify the most relevant things. ChatGPT is just a nice tiny layer into interact in a different way with that. So we see a lot of AI activities and different approaches in order to solve a problem. And I think it's not just one fits all, it's more about finding right things and building like stacks together, and the interaction of different models and approaches together brings the value. And it's, I think, a lot of thinking still needed in order to figure out what you need and what you're doing. And being open-minded with technology is always good. It's our sentence always like, love the problem, not the solution.
So I already see Corey laughing over there, because of course we want to give you a little bit of a range, right, of what's in practice already or what's in use. You have told me an example beforehand that is quite interesting. Do you want to share that with the audience? Because that's not the most common use case.
Yeah, of course. Like I explained before, we build satellites for fire detection. And one of the biggest problem is data downlink capacity. So we have very, very limited ability to link down the data we collect in orbit. And not only in terms of bandwidth, but also in terms of timing. So you see the satellites travel around the orbit, and the ground stations, they're not always where we have fires, for example. They might be a few minutes later, but for fire detection, every second counts. So what we're actually doing at OroraTech is we have created processing capabilities on our satellite, and we're using edge AI to detect fires and to also distinguish false alarms from real fires in orbit, and sending down only a few kilobytes of information, so we can warn our customers. And actually, a second application that just came to my mind is we actually use modern foundation models for rapid prototyping. So, because you will hear me say that later, most of the time, whatever you think needs to be optimized, whatever you think your customers really need, most likely you're wrong. So time to market or time to customer trumps everything. So when we first developed our own fire detection algorithms, we just used the foundation model to just show how it works in principle, and then ask the customers what specifically we could do better and what we need. And then we started training our own models.
Okay, good introduction to the next topic already. Before we move on to the startup side and the founder side of things, any tech buzzword you want to hear about or you want to hear more about before we move on? Happy with the tech side of things? Great. Okay, then if you want to stay with me here, the next one that we would talk about is path to innovation. And I think there's a lot of criteria that's important. You have already mentioned speed, like bringing things to the market, bringing it to the customer. What is the most important thing for you when you look at innovation and technologies then being formed into a product and hitting the market, hopefully?
Yeah, so like we've seen many spin-offs from great universities, like here in Munich, TUM or MIT or whatever. And most likely the teams that worked on technology for a long time in those universities, they got the tech more or less covered. So what's the most important thing to focus is, as I said before, the assumptions what customers actually need, the assumptions what the customer problems are most likely wrong. So try to get something, some early version of what you're doing out there as early as possible. Like if it doesn't hurt, if you don't feel bad, then you're most likely too late. So speed is of the essence. Having the MVP on the market as early as possible is of the essence.
Okay, so as long as we feel a little bit bad about what we are presenting to the public, we're good to go, right? That's what I've taken from this.
Exactly.
All right, so here you have your first advice. Moving on to you, Jelena, what is your perspective on this? You're head of product, you're leading the product. So what is your approach to bring things to the market?
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with everything that was said. Like, you need to be fast to get something in front of your customers. And you got to be a little bit embarrassed about that first version. Like, I still remember I was telling you guys, I joined Hostelworld to build this social network at Hostelworld. And we kind of had a conference and we were like, it would be really nice to launch before the conference. And then they were like, oh, you should, by the way, come to the conference. So I'm sitting there at a conference full of hostel owners and my team's launching something. And I'm like, oh my God. And it did not go greatly at first, but it was good enough and people got excited. And that's how you learn that people care about what you're doing. And I think a lot of people then say, oh, if you're the first to market, especially when it comes to new technologies, you've already won. And I think that's the biggest lie anybody can tell you. Because the road after you get to the market is far longer and far more painful. And if you solve a problem nobody solved before, people will start taking notice and other people will try to solve it. And there are going to be people with bigger budgets and there's going to be people with a different idea. So the competition will come around. And once the competition's there, the game is completely different. So while go fast is absolutely what I stand by, I also say be smart about it and don't stop when you get to the market and you go, ka-ching, we've solved the problem. Everything's done forever. It's not. And, you know, I work in a social space, so I'll stick with that. Does anybody here remember MySpace? It was,
oh, people do.
yay, I'm not the oldest person in the room. But like MySpace was the first social network we were all hanging out on. And I mean, there was other chats before that, but really a social network where you had your own profile and you could, by the way, choose your own song and your top 6 friends, which makes me cringe when I think back to it now. But like, that was the big social thing. And then Facebook came around and about 2 years later, nobody was talking about MySpace anymore. So being first to market is great, but you got to pay attention to competition and you got to pay attention to staying on top of things. And people will always find new problems they want you to solve for them. So you got to kind of keep up with that and keep solving issues if you want to stay competitive in the market after that first initial step into it.
So maybe a follow-up question to you then. You said you get a lot of insights from your users and customers even further on once you've launched the product, of course. How do you prioritize what you hear? Because you cannot solve everything, you cannot go down all the roads.
I feel like for the last 3 days, I've been saying the same thing, and very random that you've asked the same stuff. Do you know the word priority in English language? When it first came out, it didn't have a plural for about 500 years. So the priorities was made up in the 20th century, I believe. And that's because people decided they can't just do one thing and stick to it and go forward. So prioritization is very important. How you do it depends on you, right? If you're in B2B space, you probably listen to your big customers anyways, and it's very hard to say no to the big bugs that they bring in. I get that. I work in B2C. So for us, really, you look at the pain point, I guess, like how big is the pain? How big is for the people that have it? How big is the group of people that have it? And at the end of the day, we're all in a business of, well, how many problems can we solve if we solve this? And how much money do we earn when we solve this problem? So like, what is the cost of delaying this further and not solving this problem for us? And, if you work with data quite a lot, you can easily forecast that and try and figure out, well, solving this problem is more important than that other problem. And also how complex is it to build comes as kind of the second stage of it. Well, if there's two problems, one is a little bit better for you to solve than the other one, but the second one is 5 times faster. Well, yeah, then you're going to go by the second one. So there's plenty of kind of figuring out what you want to focus on, but especially when you're early, I think a lot of companies try to go very wide very quickly. It doesn't always work. You want to go deep first and then go wide. So solving one problem to a lot of detail and prioritizing that one thing until you get to the bottom of it and you say, happy now, I can move on to something else. I don't know if it answered your question.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice, actually. So, yes, of course.
A lot of people fighting for the mic. You said prioritization.
Yeah. What I love about your statement of going deep first and then broad is I would like to bring in that, especially in new technologies or technologies where you're trying to innovate, you always have this so-called technology adoption life cycle. In the start, you're going to have people who are just hyped about AI. They love AI and they want to buy your solution and they believe that you're going to develop it further, and they believe that it's going to be the next big thing. This is your first group of customers. Then you go further and you have people that are interested in the technology, but they want to see an impact for their companies. And then you have a big gap, and then are the big whales. And the big whales, they don't care about AI. They just care about basically if it solves their problems, if like before they buy, they want you to prove that it actually solved someone else's problem who was as big as they are. Now you see the problem. If every big whale says we only buy from you once you have proven your solution with another big whale, like where are you going to start? And there it's super important to go deep, to focus on your specific problem, to focus on your specific customer group, and try to show real impact there. And only then you have the chance to go sell your product to the big whales. If you don't do that, then you will just hype one small group of innovators and technology enthusiasts after the other, but that's not big money.
Okay, so talking about big whales and big corporations and big money, we have someone who represents a little bit the corporate side as well. So moving from entrepreneurship to intrapreneurship, getting something larger, like a larger organization to move is always harder, but you have taken on this challenge. So can you share a little bit what, from your perspective, are like success factors for intrapreneurship?
Yeah, so I worked at a large German insurance company for 5 years almost, and we had there that AI stuff and other modern stuff as well. And usually when something like that comes up, there's a large whales, I like that, large whale, they try, we need to do it as well. We need to do it as well. And then you have, you get the task, yeah, take care of it. Yeah, what should I do? Yeah, take care of it. And then you, yeah, and how we want to, yeah, next week we have a presentation as a CEO and we have to have a slide deck, yeah. And usually in a large company, everyone sees that the large slide deck solves every problem you have. You only need a large slide deck. So you produce this large slide deck with everything you can come up in 1 week. And then you go to the CEO and then it lands on some kind of wasting box or whatever. And then you wait 2 years and then someone might have you done anything. So that is usually like a large company works. And the only thing you can do is that you have some kind of a small entrepreneur company inside of the large company where you really can act, as you described it quite well, as a small company. Yeah, and then you can really concentrate and do your own decisions without that slide deck for the CEO. Yeah, which is really horrible work. Yeah? Because you know from the very beginning that it's only wasting time. Yeah? But what the other side of is that when you do those large slide deck, you get really structured. And I think that is exactly what someone have in mind, that on one hand, you need to go deeper, but you need to ask yourself what comes next. What is the next move? And that question often, as far as I can see it, startups often don't do only by chance. Yeah? Someone comes up and said, oh, here, I have money for you. Yeah? And I think what I really need to ask myself is, without a large slide deck, what is my next move?
Okay, thank you. You can just pass it to someone here. Well, maybe that's a good idea anyway, because the next topic we will talk about is not the pace and not the product itself, but we also have something coming up that's called the EU AI Act. You might have heard about it. Part of that is ethics, and I've heard a phrase before our panel that ethics is a scale-up problem. Anyone want to answer that?
Yeah, I said that before the panel when we were discussing like what should I do first? Should I push out my MVP, or should I go more in depth about like ethics, transparency? And then I said, yeah, ethics is a problem of scale, because like when nobody uses your product, then there is no ethics problem. The ethics problem happens when...
Let him go on for a little bit. Let's listen.
You can destroy me later. When the problem starts to grow once your customer base grows, once you have more and more customers. And I believe that test first in a very small environment, and when scaling up, then it's necessary to also think about ethics and transparency. But if you do it first, if you delay bringing out your MVP, it might kill you as a company if you over-engineer that.
Okay, let's move to Annegret. I think she has a diverging view.
Not really. Yeah? Also to be fast and to have your MVP so that you can show that your idea works. I think that is out of question, that you need to do. Yeah. But on the other hand, you need to be aware that you might have a problem. You don't need to solve it right away, but you need to think about you might have a problem. You might be a problem that your data are biased. Yeah, and I think that is the most difficult problem even to solve, because you started with it. When you start with biased data, then probably something goes completely wrong. Yeah, and we had in the insurance company, we had a project with a chatbot for life insurance, and all the data we had was from young male people. Of course, it was the developers and that was the data we had. Yeah, and it came completely wrong things out. Yeah, and when I looked at it as I'll be friendly to myself, a middle-aged woman, yeah, something else come up totally contradicting the things we had. And therefore, it was not wrong what the guys did, yeah, but it was only that they was not aware that there might be later problem. And I think to collect ideas and problems in the very beginning without the need to solve them is a good idea to have.
So maybe over to you, Paul, because I think balanced data sets, topics from a more structural perspective, is something you have been dealing with quite a lot because you were involved in the development of, let's say, the approach we have taken in the EU, right?
Yes, maybe there's a comment. I think really the truth of it as often is in the middle. And the statement I would make it is that ethics become a serious problem, difficult to solve when you scale up, right? Even when we work with your 5 students, obviously you do experiments, you have to follow ethics, but ethics is simple. It's on the level, or you don't kill your subject, right? You know, there are very simple rules for working when you work in the lab. And it makes a lot of sense to just do things in the lab first, just observing these very simple rules, and then you think about the long thing. So the point is, it becomes a serious problem once you scale up, right? And talking about balanced data sets and let's say talking about ethics and legal issues of AI, I think the main rule to keep in mind, there's this very nice English proverb saying there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? And that's what you need to remember about technology. Any technology introduces its benefits, and it always has costs. It always has things, right? I mean, the cost of having cars on the roads is that people die, right? As a society, we decide that it's a worthy price to have cars. I mean, it's true that is the trade-off you make, and it's a very grave trade-off. And the problem is that when you look at regulation, you always, and ethics, you only have to see it from that point of view. And very often you see people, like in Europe, you have this tendency to look at costs only, right? You have a technology, and you think, how can I reduce the cost of that technology to zero? Which just doesn't work. It never will be a zero cost of technology, right? In the US, very often you have people who tend to forget about the cost and only focus on the benefits, right? Which has advantages. You proceed fast, but you can have fun. And what you need is a balanced process of balancing costs and benefits of technology, having a sort of social dispute on that, and then we can decide what we accept.
So,
and that, in the end, is regulation is about. And I think in the AI Act, the European Union tried to follow this path. You know, experts were involved, and we now have this risk-based approach, right? When we beat technology that is there, let's say, just for something that is harmless, some harmless games, there's very little regulation. Where you use AI to make a diagnosis that would determine a treatment for someone when someone can die, that would better be a very well-regulated technology, right? And I think it's a really reasonable approach. As any law, as it got through a legislative process, things happened that was strange. I have my favorite example. Somebody inserted a total prohibition of any recognition of emotions in education and the workplace, which, you know, I would just state is fairly nonsensical because it means you cannot use AI in education at all. Because you give something educational thing, you have to look at cognitive load. But, you know, as a technological process, right, you said be fast, test and release it. You should grant the same luxury to the legislature, right? That they can release an update, right? So we release an update, maybe we should give them luxury of doing so as long as they update.
So you were talking about social dispute, and I think that is a good point for us maybe to have a look at our audience in terms of the AI Act and AI ethics and the approach we have in the EU. Maybe hands up who is concerned about this approach and feels that this might bring us disadvantages. Okay. And who thinks it can work in our favor as well if we do it right? So you see, it's balanced. We would have a balanced data set. So maybe moving on to you two from practice, but I've seen your hand very quickly rising up. So what is your perspective on the AI? Yeah.
Only one point, because I raised the hand at both point. And I think that is exactly where I
A balanced data sheet in herself.
Where I struggle with, because the thing is, when I want to balance out the benefits against the costs, yeah, I need to define what are costs. And I think there is where I'm struggling with what I don't know.
Yeah, it's just like what I'm most concerned with is just a regulatory load on small companies, on starting up companies. It's already the regulatory load in the EU is exceptionally high. It's like you could almost recommend don't start a company. It's just like bureaucratic mess, at least not in the EU. And I see it a little bit critical when adding like this type of regulatory load. So from my perspective, so early in the development of a technology, it can be disadvantageous. On the other side, I understand that like when you're already as a like EU behind in innovation, you need to protect yourself, you need to do something. What I can lobby for is where there is a shield, there also needs to be a sword. And I would love to see more like well-intentioned funds, public funds, that act in a form of anchor customer, for example.
Or an incentive. Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe I want to throw in two things as well, which is not exactly the moderator role, but now I feel like I can't help myself. So first point, we did a little research here in-house and we talked to startups in the life sciences field. So they already deal with a high regulatory load. And they were actually not as concerned about the AI Act because they were saying there's such a great overlap. Like for us, things are not really changing. Any comments to that?
Just wanted to comment, and very often you can see everything that comes up to you in life as an opportunity or as a problem, right? So there are regulatory problems, right? And being a scientist is difficult to defend regulation, right? But still, and what you often see is Europe is a huge market, right? If you develop in Europe and you develop in line with these regulations, you probably have to solve problems you wouldn't have to solve otherwise, right? But when you solve them, you actually have a competitive advantage at the European market because you had to solve them. You actually have support to solving them. Somebody come, big guys from outside, they struggle. And then actually some of those regulations actually make sense, which means they lead to better products. Once you develop the better products, you may actually sell them outside. There was this, I remember when I was a kid, which is quite time ago, it was saying like it was made in Germany was this big thing because, these cars were so good and so robust, right? And it sort of has to do with it, that it's a slow process. So one way maybe to do it is that you can see it as an opportunity to develop solutions which will protect you from some competition and give you an advantage. It doesn't always work, right? But it's one of the way of seeing it. As a scientist, that's the way I see it, right? There's a problem with data. Well, I have to develop learning solutions that work with little data or not annotated data or anonymized data. It's just another problem. Interesting challenge.
I will remember you for a question later. So my second point, because I do in part, of course, agree that starting a deep tech company already requires a lot of funds, right? And it does take time. And so with the regulation, on top of that, we throw another hurdle. So I do understand that. Singapore, for example, what they are offering is an expedited patent process where they help startups get into patents, but also they offer regulatory sandboxes. So you do have an isolated environment where you develop your product and then you take it to the market, which, for example, here in Europe would then help us that we don't need to audit again and again and again, but gives us a little more space and time as a startup to comply with the regulation. So maybe moving to you, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think this approach would work?
It depends. That's the most product management answer I can give anyone. But what I agree with Paul on is you can see an opportunity or a problem. And one of the opportunities is to go after a market that's not in Europe, even though you're building in Europe, because you can make your money there with less regulation. I mean, I generally think what Corbin was saying, we might over-regulate too early here in Europe. And when I look at, a lot of the stuff and I work for a publicly traded company, right? So I talk to legal teams more than I did ever before, even though we're a small company. And sometimes you run into something and it's like, no, you can't do that in EU. And you just look at it and you go, but why? Right? And sometimes it's small, silly things where I go, maybe we've skewed a bit too much towards regulation. But for me, when it comes to AI and kind of rolling it back to AI, we might have started regulated a bit too soon without giving people the chance to build up products and build up their opportunities. And if you look at startups, now everybody wants to see you have revenue to give you significant investment. And how do you get revenue quickly if you need to spend more time building your product to work with all the regulation that sit in between? Well, then you probably sell to, I don't know, American clients where you can make the money without the regulation and then you have the revenue and then you bring it into Europe. So you got to kind of work around it. But I do think it's stifling EU regulation a bit. And look, when we look at startup ecosystem, a lot of the companies move to US at one point because it makes it easier. So I do think there's a bit of room to reconsider how much and how quickly we tend to regulate in Europe versus US or even the Asian markets, which tend to copy from US rather than from Europe when it comes to these things. And we might be overdoing certain things and overdoing them too quickly.
So moving on to our last section of questions, and then also to the Q&A, of course, because I see a few people here already eager to ask questions. Do you think AI can come to save us in this if we apply AI and work with AI and raise productivity? Like, what do you see as a potential in collaboration between human and AI?
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, a lot of the jobs were manual, right? And then somebody invented factories, and those factories could do certain things much faster than a human can, and that helped us a lot, right? We developed the whole industrialization period of our civilization development, and that helped do a lot of the stuff that probably if we kept doing them manually as people, we wouldn't be able to do ever, most probably. So I see AI in a similar way, where it can help us speed up a lot of the things and help us do a lot more faster. But then I think about, and I'm maybe a bit of a romantic, I think about people and I feel like I've never read a poem by AI that really moved me. And maybe it's because I knew it's AI and I'm like, it's not a human emotion. So I do think there's still a lot that we humans bring to the table, even when robots try to take over in terms of our human experiences and in terms of, emotion in particular, for example, is something that I don't see machines being able to reproduce for us so quickly. I know a lot of people will disagree, but I think there's just something in the human experience and human existence that is still different to AI. And we should try and understand where AI is helping us solve problems and where we are just throwing AI at a problem because it's the new fancy buzzword, and what we should be doing ourselves as humans still. Do I want AI coming up with my next strategy? Probably not, because I'm using the same AI as other people. So we're all going to end up with the same ideas.
So encouraging thoughts. Christoph, you told me something about a carpet floor. What was that about with AI?
So when we're talking about productivity, we talked about in the last hundreds of years about improving the shop floor, basically production, making production faster, leaner, lean principles that came along. But that's just part of a company. Like there's a marketing team, there's a sales team. So what we are seeing in the recent past is like where like data, and especially now with AI and even more powerful AI solutions and combining them, you can really, really bring lean, combining it with AI to the carpet floor and really improving the process in the back and the front office quite dramatically. We're working with companies, for example, for the sales process. A lot of companies know about tendering processes with thousands of pages, and then you need to analyze them and figuring out, and it takes weeks, and then you figuring out that you need to build a new product or a custom-made solution. But we have the customer in the Nordics to have an offer already after 2 days to increase the cycle time, basically. So they were able to ship 60% of the custom-made solutions into standard solutions because, the original customer did not know what they really, really want, and trying to figure out what are the parameters they want to have in their buildings and stuff like that. So there's a lot of opportunities with the AI, and it's only that on the individual level that we experience with ChatGPT, but there's the process we know. But also when you know what you're selling, and it's more clear what you're selling, it's also helping the construction. The favorite example is like your ordering machine. It needs to be configured. There is materials coming in and out, and it stands at a place. It stands maybe in Singapore and not in Helsinki. The humid conditions are different. So you sell something, you sell a service, you sell a configuration, but the people in the end building up the machinery need to know that. And this is actually a really, real problem, that the end-to-end transparency is missing. So there's a lot of waste, a lot of problems arising. And now we're seeing a shift into that, where an AI can help gap in figuring out, is this data a hard condition or is it more of a guess or recommendations? And these kind of things are happening and changing the market quite rapidly, especially on the carpet floor, meaning all the non-production lines, which when we're looking at the bigger picture in Europe at the moment, and especially Germany, is when you're looking at our automotive industry, it's super under pressure. Part of that is like China and US having high subsidies, so that they're lowering the prices with higher headcount. So what are you doing when you don't get that? You need to get more efficient. And the only way they're thinking at the moment they're getting more efficient is at the carpet floor. Because then we cannot hire, we don't want to fire, not all of them, but a lot of them. And with all the people we have, we need to do more. we need a competition, and they're betting on their core strategy at the moment, and which is why I think the carbon floor topic is so important. Is we need to sustain the next 2 years with the subsidies, and then we will be on top again. And therefore, we see at Futurice and a lot of our customers the carpet floor and AI and lean methodology as a huge game changer for these companies. And it's combining all the silos, like I said in the beginning, connected company, and it's all coming together with AI, also filling gaps in a host of informations.
Corby, connected systems. I know ethics can wait, but what about trust?
So there's one interesting story I wanted to tell you, and that is like we're dealing with fire detection. And from a company side, yeah, we just have the satellite, we detect fires, and we tell our customers. A few months back, I was sitting at a bar with one of our customers, and he was telling me that story where he was at the like in Canada. He needed to decide where to send resources, one city or the other city. Both cities were endangered by an oncoming fire. There was a high risk for both cities to burn down, and he needed to decide where it makes sense to send the resources. And what he told is, if you give me information, I better be able to trust it. If I cannot trust the information, if I cannot trust the system, I don't want to hear it at all. And for me, a super important question is like, how do we build that trust between AI systems and humans? How do we communicate transparently what we can do and what we cannot do? And just let me make another example. Like if I go to ChatGPT and ask it something, if it helps me 1/3 of the time, I'm super happy. If we go to our customers and we provide insights, data, or recommendations, and they're right 95% of the time, it's already a disaster for them.
Last but not least, Annegret, what is your perspective on the synergy between AI and humans?
I dream, and I love to dream. I'm a software architect, and software architects always dream. And for me, software architecture is a quite creative process. Yeah? And I hate for myself all the formal processes I have to do, yeah, to bring my hand-drawn pictures to something which is not so hand-drawn, and when it's then a little bit better drawn in the computer, then to bring it to code, etc. And that process is tiresome, usually, yeah, because the real decision was done on a whiteboard, yeah, with some kind of not so good recognized boxes. And what I really like and what I dream of is that AI can help me to bring that not so good recognizable boxes to code.
Perfect. Last words before we start questions.
Because I really like what you said, Jelena, about this being a tool. And I think it's a really, really important thing to understand. You mentioned like the industrialization. And very often I like to think about AI like what you call cognitive exoskeleton, right? It's not something that does something for you, but it just helps you do things better and stronger. And you have to do them right. And I like the example also about art, right? Because it helps you understand what the technology can do, what it cannot do. It can replicate on a statistical level perfectly the signal distribution in a nice picture, but it still doesn't produce a work of art. Why? Because a work of art essentially is defined by the ability of the artist to translate his emotion, his experience into, let's say, something like, but that's what art is, right? And this process of creation is more important than the actual signal level product. So AI can reproduce art at signal level statistically, but if we humans define art as the process of creating it, there's no competition, right? And there's no problem. Actually, AI can help artists create better art because it helps them code their emotion better into signals. But there has to be a human in the process. Otherwise, it's just statistical signal representation.
And so with this, we came to the end of our panel. So thank you very much. You've been an amazing panel. And now it's your turn as our audience to ask questions. As for the process, we don't have a mic wandering around, so you can just ask the question. I'm going to repeat it for the virtual audience, and then we have someone answer it. You're ready? Who's first? We have so many ladies. Okay, but you can also go, of course, first.
About ethics, because I think there are some things like killing people or illegal things which are clearly unethical, and I wouldn't even try to build an MVP, and there should be some common ground that we don't do harm.
Okay, so maybe if I can start giving you an answer because I did my PhD in AI ethics. So I think there's always philosophical approaches underlying. So let's say Kant or utilitarianism, where you try and have the best outcome for the largest group, for example, or if you go towards Kant, and you would say that every life matters the same way. Those are questions that have always been part of the decision making, let's say for the human race, and every time you have a military action, you will always have one of those principles be underlying. So I think it's a combination of philosophy, decision making, ethics, and then you have the AI, who's basically the one who does the automated decision making. But I'm happy to hear the panel as well. If you have any thoughts on that, that would have been my answer, that I think it's always a combination and not only AI ethics that comes into play here.
Maybe I'm the unlikeliest person to answer to ethics, but it is on.
It is.
I hear myself also loud.
Yeah.
So I think ethics is also a term that evolves over time quite a bit, and what does ethical means. And when you're looking at rules and regulations, and I almost wanted to jump in when we talked about that beforehand, is like regulations and ethics, when they are speaking out, people optimize around them. That's typical, like it's just a set of rules we set and it's not the reality. So ethics will always continue to evolve because you optimize around that and you're figuring out, okay, with this optimization, although intended well, there's another problem coming up. So it's like the problems we've solved are finite and the problems we need to have in front of us are infinite. So that's always the problem that we encounter when we're talking about abstracting the reality in technical or otherwise methodology.
So I remember we had a question here regarding regulation, if I'm not mistaken, no?
Really question, more
Yeah.
of a comment, and I love there was another one, so there is a 1,000 pages, whatever instruction, but somebody writes those instructions. I moved to Germany from Ireland, and I did not appreciate Ireland before, but once I moved, I now see the difference in the legal system. I think the legal system is the biggest problem here, because as a VC on one hand and as a startup on the other hand, the last thing that I want is to invest into the startup that is actually funded, incorporated in Germany or in France, because it's just a disaster, let's say. And before even the product is created, you have to overcome so many obstacles. That is just mind-boggling. I have to admit that's killing me. And I enjoy living in Germany, and there are so many good things about it, and I love BMW and so on and so on. However, we talk about privacy, for example, and I see people's name on the doors. Like those things we tend not to see.
Yeah.
And I suggest we pay attention to them. And I spend so much more time and effort and money to run my company here versus what I spend in Ireland.
Okay, so I'm just going to repeat it for the virtual audience. Oh, good. And I actually think it's much appreciated. For the virtual audience, we just heard that from an investor's perspective, it's kind of concerning to invest in German startups or European startups for that matter, because of all the initial hurdles you have to overcome as compared to startups outside the EU, right? That's what I've understood. A question from a lady. Very nice. Hi.
Not long ago, companies had to deal with entire.
Now I don't even have to repeat it, hopefully. Let's see. We'll try.
No? Okay. So not long ago, also me on the product side within a company had to deal with entire data privacy regulation. So companies really were overwhelmed with all the rules and how we apply it, and do we work with IT, do we work with clients, do we disclose things with clients, etc., etc. So it's not long. I'm talking about 2-3 years in the past, and now we have the hype of AI, and the new regulation, unfortunately, is also echoed by the press. And we're talking about so many people who are not really understanding the depth of it. And it's creating the situation of the conflict of trust versus implementation. So trust versus fear is what I wanted to say. So how within your experience you think companies can deal with this much better? I think Christoph can also provide a.
All right. No, but I think we heard it. So it's the question of how you can deal with this better. So Christoph, I think you were the chosen one.
I can say something, and I think we need to look at that more also globally. And you mentioned that it's outside of Europe, and you mentioned the same thing. And data is a key point in that, and the data privacy as well. And we are a Finnish company, for example. The same EU laws apply there as well. The interpretation of the laws is quite different. So there was, I think, a year or 1.5 years ago about a data breach at the biggest social securer in Helsinki, a huge data breach. So in Germany, they would have been out of business, basically. That was a note in the newspaper. It was clearly mentioned what happened, why it happened, and what they're doing about. And that was a note. Everybody took it. And this kind of culture difference allows them to be more risk-taking also with data a little bit. And to your point about, and your hand waving, distracting me, you mentioned something about, almost forgetting it.
Fear and how you can handle it better.
Yes, trust. Trust versus fear, I would say it needs to be trust and transparency, and very much care aspect into that. And in the application, the future that have entire AI, they need to have that. They need to be transparent what is happening and why it's happening. We see a lot of human in the loop activities around AI, which is super crucial, but also the care aspect. Like with every application that is successful or should be successful, if it does something good for people and has a caring aspect in there, it usually is not diminishing the end customer. So for example, Facebook is really, really robbing people of data and everything. When I see, for example, I don't know if it's common in Flatiron Health, this is a company, an open data company that connects cancer patients in the US, because there's 160 different cancer types, and not all of them need chemotherapy, or not all of them are lethal, but not every doctor is an expert. So what can you do with this information and stuff? So you share data, but this company is caring about you as an individual, as better drugs, more affordable healthcare, and doctors being better prepared to treat people, to diagnose people. And you're seeing these platforms really, really shine and being profitable. And I think this is what we need to have in mind, the caring aspect to the transparency, because then the trust is baked into that as well. And this is how I see it. And I think that's at least what I build. This is always the mantra I have, also very deep in our core values as a company. But for me, it's important. Trust, transparency, and care together only change things.
Perfect. Thank you. And then we have the last question, because we slowly have to come to an end.
I just say transparency is the key to trust, right? It's important. And also what you said about how the laws are applied. In Germany, a bigger problem maybe than actually the regulation with privacy is that people got accustomed to using privacy. If you don't want to do something, you just say it's not possible because of privacy, right? And it's okay, and nobody will discuss with it. And especially in bureaucracy, the standard thing, university administration, no, privacy rule, data browse, doesn't work. That's a standard thing.
Okay, last question, maybe from the audience. Oh no. Actually, the lady behind you was first. I'm sorry. Yes. And then for all the other questions, for everyone who's here in the room with us, we can have one-on-one questions. That's okay.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, first of all, thank you for the nice panel. I really enjoy it. My question will be about sustainability area. Since we have Paris Agreement, we all know, so reducing the carbon footprint nearly to the zero emission. So what about your strategy about this point, and yeah, long or short term? Or do you feel any pressure about it?
Just give the mic forward. If it's a very fast question, we can squeeze in one more. Okay, but who's going to answer?
I think with AI, really sustainability now is a big issue. And one of the key research questions is now, reducing the footprint, the computational intensity. And also it's a matter of a trade-off again. AI can contribute greatly to reducing carbon footprint by optimizing things, electric charging and other stuff, but it also creates some considerable carbon footprint. And that's really one of the next big challenges in AI. By the way, related to this neurosymbolic, right? To introducing rules back again, instead of just having the system learn everything, maybe you should help it, right? There are some ways to make it easy.
And I would also add something, hardware in AI is a big thing. So we need innovation there as well that would then require less energy. And there are a lot of like decentralized approaches. So if you're interested, I can also connect you with startups that we have in our portfolio, and you can talk to them as well.
I want to add some small note that we're talking about ChatGPT and the energy consumption. That's really concerning. But when I'm looking at what in the farming industry happened with AI to reduce waste, the pollution and stuff, that this is remarkable. And these kind of things there, you need AI quite a bit. And there's a reason why in the Twin Transition project of the EU, AI plays a pivotal role in order to do so. And I think we should see the upside and should work on the downside of the energy consumption, which is obviously a topic, and it needs to get more efficient. But it will be a huge role to improve things around the world.
Now you get answers from everyone.
Sorry, it's really a great thing. And as I said in the very beginning, that our company is really take care of green IT. Yeah. And it's exactly as you said. Yeah. You need to balance out the cost for the nature against the benefits you get. Yeah. When I can save in human life, probably I can live with the cost for the nature. I don't know. Yeah, it's a really difficult question, but I think for each project and for each company, it needs to be answered again and again.
Okay. So last quick question.
Actually, we hardware company working. So my question goes back to the point I was making. AI is signals and processing the math equation, and most of this session was about human emotions and laws and regulation. And then we were questioning why Europe is behind the region. Do you think the other regions having a similar startups would be discussing the same topics, or would they be talking about what AI can do and what we should do with it?
Very good point.
Yeah, I think it was exactly the point that the culture in Europe, especially in Germany, is to focus in this cost-benefit analysis on the costs and try to minimize the costs before talking about benefits. Other cultures look at it from a different perspective. They try to maximize the benefits and think about costs later. So I personally believe there should be a middle road within there.
I think
AI and technology, this is the worst it's ever going to be. This is the biggest problem we're probably going to have. Some of the problems will solve in time. We're probably looking at the first person to live beyond 150, maybe alive, if they're young enough to benefit from AI. We're talking about regulations and things that the development of these technologies. That's my concern. Probably the discussion.
so. I think we will take this into account, maybe to give you a little bit of hope. Once you go home after the event, all of us are contributing to products and solutions and innovation. So yes, you're right. The focus today was on a lot of aspects, but at least in our daily life, we focus on bringing everything forward. So thank you. And with this, the floor is open. Grab the speaker you're interested in, bring him a drink, and then ask them all the questions. Thank you.